New season, new builds, right? Well, not exactly. The balance patch was kind of lacking. However, there's still people trying out new stuff, so there will be a few builds on this list that didn't make it last time. Let's look at them. I want to preface this by saying this is my personal top 10, also in no particular order. As well as that, if you have to choose a build, definitely choose one that you actually enjoy. League start is kind of the most hype period of every league, but it's also where you have to gear anew, right? You have to farm everything up. So playing a build that you don't actually enjoy and that you just play because somebody told you to play it is a little bit of a downer. If you don't enjoy your build, you will not properly play it. You will not think about certain things because you don't really care as much. Enjoy it, you will want to upgrade, you will want to get into endgame. Also, these league starters are more targeted towards softcore trade, although if a build is hardcore viable, I will mention it as well. Starting off with the cold DoT Elementalist. This is a build that revolves around certain skills that deal cold damage over time. For example, Vortex, Arctic Breath, and Cold Snap. Stack all of these dots together and you have a really, really strong Elementalist with good AoE, good clear, decent single target damage. Just an overall great all-rounder. Your defenses are also fine. Everything around you is permanently slowed. Elementalist gives you great AoE. Just overall, a very strong package for a league starter and something I would recommend also to new players quite a bit, whether that is softcore or hardcore. Link to Tripolar Bear's guide down below. Number 2, the Detonate Dead Elementalist. Another one, but this time a version from Scissoran, which is more focused towards hardcore, but it is quite a strong build on softcore as well. I would say the only downside this build really has is that it uses 2 buttons. First, you press Desecrate to summon corpses, and then you detonate them with Detonate Dead. But otherwise, it has good clear, it has really good defenses, it has okay single target damage. Everything that you need at League Start is in there. It's also one of those builds that racers really like because it needs absolutely no gear to function, so you don't really need to think about much. Link to Scissoran's full guide down below in the description. Number 3, the currently best melee league starter, which is Boneshatter Juggernaut. Boneshatter is a melee attack that basically reflects damage back to you, giving you trauma stacks, and those trauma stacks make you stronger the more damage you take. The damage is physical, so you want to stack a lot of armor. Otherwise, your own attacks will come back to haunt you. As well as that, if you stun an enemy, you get an explosion around him. So basically, while you're clearing, you're going to get a lot of AoE procs. The build is fast, fun, has really good defenses. I guess if I had to name a downside, it is definitely single target damage, especially if you don't know how to craft and upgrade your weapons. So if you don't know anything about that, definitely prepare that before. Link to Tripolar Bear's guide down below. Number 4, the Righteous Fire Inquisitor. Now, a lot of skills on this list are just really strong or really OP. Righteous Fire, on the other hand, is a pretty balanced skill all around, but sometimes builds get elevated through content creators. Now, Righteous Fire is a fire AoE around you, which burns everything in your path. However, you have the downside of degenning yourself for fire damage, which you have to counteract with a lot of fire resistance and also a ton of regen. Once you have that figured out, though, the build is absolutely great while mapping. You basically just have to shield charge around and everything dies. Often you don't even have to press any other buttons. But that coziness comes at the price of single target damage mostly, which Fire Trap does substitute a little bit, but it's definitely not one of those builds you want to take to Ubers early. That being said, though, the build is very tanky, so even against some of those bosses that might take a little bit longer, you can mostly just stand around and wait. I'll link the build guide down below in the description, and if you have further questions, the man made a wiki page. God damn it. So yeah, let the man rest. Number 5, Explosive Arrow Ballista, either the Elementalist version or the Champion version. Explosive Arrow sticks fuses into an enemy, and after a short duration, it explodes. Depending on how many fuses are stuck in that enemy, the explosion will get bigger and bigger. And that's also the reason we're using ballistas. We can stick more fuses into an enemy faster because we can put them all down. They're firing away, right? There's 2 versions of this build. One of them is the Elementalist version, which I personally prefer on softcore, and the Champion version, which I would recommend on hardcore. If I had to compare the versions, it's basically Elementalist deals round about double damage and has like a lot more AoE, but the Champion is quite a lot more durable. However, both builds are very solo self-found friendly. It basically means you don't need any uniques. You are going to be fine. Your damage is always going to be quite good. Your clear is always going to be good because of Ignite Proliferation. It is my favorite all-rounder, and it still has a place in my heart. I played it 3.17, 3.18, and at some point, I'm sure I'm going to play it again. However, not everybody likes the totem playstyle. You're not doing damage yourself. The damage is a little bit delayed, so definitely try that out before League Start if that's actually something you want to do. Link to my Elementalist guide and Scissoran's Champion guide down below in the description. Then we have number 6, the Lightning Arrow Deadeye. Now, what can I say about this build? It is incredibly fast. It is the soft core build that you play if you want to juice. It has clear speed that for a League starter is very hard to replicate with anything else, but it does come at the cost of boss damage and defenses. Now, Artillery Ballista does help out a little bit in terms of the single target component, but when it comes to defenses, Deadeye is just not that well set up. But especially if you're somebody who's capable to make a lot of currency early, you can snowball real quickly with a good mapping strat and just blasting through maps. Link to Crouching Tuna's guide down in the description. Next up is the Toxic Rain Ballista Pathfinder. Basically, you're shooting toxic arrows into the air. When they fall down, they spawn a spore that explodes for a lot of damage over time. Now, there is a version where you cast yourself, and ballistas are kind of just like a side thing. And there's this version right here that goes all in on ballistas. The difference is basically that the ballista version does a lot more damage. However, the other version has more clear speed. This is one of the better all-rounders in the game currently, especially if you like the totem playstyle. And for example, if you compare it to the other totem build on the list, the Explosive Arrow Ballista, this build has inbuilt defenses in terms of regeneration and just being Pathfinder in general, having better flask and flask effect. It doesn't have ignite proliferation though, so that's a little bit of a downside. But in general, a very, very solid build. Also, your endgame weapon costs like a few chaos that you can wear and basically do all the content in the game with. Also a huge upside in terms of gearing. You will not have a problem with this. Link to my League starter guide down in the description. Number 8, the Corrupting Fever Champion. Corrupting Fever is a buff that basically costs life. After that buff, your next attacks will apply Corrupted Blood to enemies. This is a damage over time effect similar to Bleed, but unlike Bleed, you can stack it up to 10 times. And you can apply this buff with whatever skill you want. In this case, that is Kinetic Blast, because it has a lot of coverage. While I think this build is incredible for players who know exactly how to gear, it has exactly the right amount of damage. For newer players, if you make mistakes, you might fall into a category where you're not going to feel comfortable with it anymore. Don't get me wrong, the clear is fantastic. It pops legions like nothing else, but there is definitely downsides to the itemization. However, it does have inbuilt defenses because you're champion, so that is a huge upside as well. Link to Tripolar Bear's guide down below. Number 9, the Impending Doom Pathfinder. This was already a very strong build for the last few leagues as an occultist, and now it has a Pathfinder overhaul. It is a poison-based build, and on this version, it trades in explosions from occultist for poison proliferation, way better recovery, and defenses. Whenever you cast a curse that is supported by Impending Doom and that curse runs out, you get an explosion. Now you can force your curse running out earlier by overriding the curse limit. It's a little bit complicated, doesn't matter. Either way, you get a ton of map clear and explosions. The problem is the build has a little bit of a ramp up time until it starts doing actual damage and clear hacks nicely. So it's not really recommended in a solo self-found environment. I would rather see this as a trade build. Once you get some currency into this build though, oh boy, it absolutely destroys maps. Guide by Crouching Tuna down in the description. And number 10, my league star for this league, Hexblast Mines Saboteur. So Hexblast is basically a big, slow, damaging AoE that you throw on enemies. It has the downside of being slow, like I said, but you override that by going mines. Mines have their own mine throwing speed, so you can throw down 20 of them and get 20 explosions. The build has a ton of boss damage, and since it can pre-throw mines before the boss even comes up and wait for the explosion, you can basically insta-phase bosses at a certain amount of gear. The mines also auto-target, so clearing maps is really nice to do. However, defenses are a little bit of a problem. It's definitely not a glass cannon like some of the other builds on this list, but it will never get tanky enough to be played in hardcore. Also, some people just really don't like mines, especially at bosses. You have to be mindful of what you do. You can't just mash buttons. Link to my league starter down below in the description. I guess I have one more honorable mention, which would be Melee Ignite. Now, I'm not touching this with a 10-foot pole. I've tried it before, but it got a lot of buffs this league. Whether it's Infernal Blow or Earthquake, I think it is time that somebody tries this out. We're definitely going to do that towards the end of the league. For now, I'm not risking anything for my own league start. I'm just putting it out there in case people want to experiment. But that concludes the list. Thank you for watching. Hope you guys have a great league start. If you're looking for more league starters, check out maxroll.gg. I'm writing over there. It's a pretty cool site. And yeah, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.